Hey, I'm Chef Todd Mohr. Welcome back to Cooking Coarse. Glad you joined me again. We have been talking about making sauces recently. We talked about a cornstarch slurry. We learned how to make a roux with butter and flour. And this is going to be the element of what we talk about today. And I'm really excited about today because this is really cool. We combine actually a saute method, the braising method when we add liquid to it, along with what we've been speaking about with roux. So we're going to make a beef something today. We're going to start out 3 or 4 steps into making beef bourguignon or beef stroganoff or a beef with mushrooms and a savory gravy. It's all done the same way, and it's all done starting with our trusty saute pan that we have on the stove. Remember, a direct source intense heat for our saute pan winds up on the stove top. So step 1, we want to make sure the pan is hot. How do we know when the pan is hot? Well, a little bit of liquid, as long as our fire stays lit, a little bit of liquid in the pan, psh, and we hear that psh. That means the pan is at least 212 degrees because water evaporates at that temperature. Get rid of any additional liquid because I'm about to add some fat. My olive oil will go into the pan. Again, maybe a tablespoon worth or 2 tablespoons worth, just enough to barely coat the bottom of the pan to where I can tip this pan up to the camera so you can see it and it doesn't go running on the floor. It is just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And now I'm going to swirl the pan around to make sure that the oil covers the entire bottom of the pan. I want to heat the oil until just before it begins to smoke. How do you tell just before something's going to happen? Well, it gives us our indicators, because even though the oil is only a micromillimeter thick, it heats, rises, cools, falls, heats, rises, begins a convection process. When that convection process begins, the oil gets lines to it. It gets ripples. I don't know if you can see that in the light there, but it gets this striation, the ripples. It's kind of like the legs on your wine glass. And as soon as you start to see that oil get ripples in it, go from perfectly smooth to being like hammer banged metal and having little pits in it, we know it's just about to smoke. So what I can do at this point is add some onions to it. Saute some onions if I'd like. Get them a little moist, and what I have is some beef, some cubed beef here. Now, I talked about adding 2 different things because previously we learned that fat and starch is roux. Well, I've got some olive oil in the pan there, and I've got certainly fat on this beef, but I've also got some flour. So I'm going to go ahead and add some flour to that beef and toss this around to coat all the surface area of the beef. So when this flour that is now on the beef meets the olive oil in the pan, what have I got? I've got roux. I've got a nice little shortcut. Instead of making a roux in a separate pan that I can coat my protein product with flour. When I add it to the pan that the olive oil is in, what winds up on the bottom of the pan is not fond, is not the rendered fat from the item like we've seen before, because the item is coated in flour. What winds up in the bottom of the pan is our roux. So let me go ahead and stir this around a little bit so I can come back and show you. We could have added the onions after the beef. We can add the onions before the beef if we want to caramelize them a little bit, depending on how cooked you want your onions to be. So now if I come show you what's in this pan, so now you see what I've got on the bottom of the pan here. This is not fond, this is not the rendered fat, but this is the combination of the olive oil and the flour to make me a roux in the bottom of the pan. Now I'll go ahead back to the stove and go ahead and add a broth to it, some kind of liquid that, as we've seen previously, will start to gelatinize at 150 degrees and make a nice pan gravy for me. So we'll take this back onto the stove. Let's add a little more heat to it. And we've got that nice combination of fat and starch in the bottom of the pan. What I can do now is go ahead and add some beef broth. Yeah, out of the can, out of the carton. We don't have to go through all that to make our own beef broth. Go ahead and add that to the pan. That is, in essence, going to deglaze the pan. I use that term loosely in this situation because what I want is that combination of fat and starch. I'm going to go ahead and add some mushrooms to the pan so they cook through. But I'm going to come over there and show you how thin the gravy is right now, and then we'll see how thick it will be in just a minute. So check this out. So here's our beef dish with gravy, and we can see how thin it is right now because it's just the stock, but it is already starting to thicken. And I've shown you nappe before, where we take the spoon and we draw our finger across and see if the sauce runs back together. Well, this sauce isn't even thick enough to coat the back of the spoon right now to hold on there. So we're going to go back to the stove and try and thicken this sauce up a little bit. So back to our stove over here, back to the heat, because what we're trying to do is get this to reach our magic temperature of 150 degrees, where those starches start to gelatinize and thicken up our gravy. So we have created a one-dish dinner here. We didn't have to make a roux in a separate pan and add that to some simmering liquid to make a gravy. We simply coated our protein product, our beef in this situation, with some flour that combined with the olive oil to make our roux. Remember, if it's a hot roux, which it is in this instance, it needs to be a cold liquid. They always need to be at different extremes, otherwise we get lumps from that as well. So now this is beef stroganoff if you wanted to. We would add a little bit of mustard to it and maybe some sour cream and serve that over some egg noodles. This could be beef bourguignon as well if we added some red wine to it previously. And now my gravy is really starting to thicken up nicely. It could be beef bourguignon if we added red wine to it and maybe some tomato paste. This is how we make chicken marsala as well. You could take chicken cubes, white meat chicken, or chicken pieces, leg, thigh kind of thing, coat them in flour. They get pan fried or pan sauteed, and then the liquid is added for a roux. There are so many different recipes that use the same type of procedure that you can now go make one up if you want. Take some shrimp, coat the shrimp in flour, saute them in some butter, add some shrimp broth or even some chicken broth or some kind of flavorful liquid to that, and you've made yourself a nice shrimp type gravy. We could do this with crayfish, we could do it with scallops, we could do it with clams, with pork, with anything. This is a great procedure in your home to create a beautiful pan sauce gravy that you can then serve over something else. So now it's time really to show you our nappe. Bring this back over to you guys. And here's our beef dish that isn't quite completed yet because we may add some more things to it. But look how my gravy thickened up in here. And actually now, if I dip the spoon in the bottom of it, look at how that gravy sticks to the spoon now. And running my finger across it gives me clear nappe. That sauce doesn't run together at all. But still, what I've got in this pan here is some uncooked beef. And one of the indicators of how well this is coming along is look at the blood coming out of there. The red coming out of the juices. This is a combination cooking method because we started with the olive oil, started with a saute, and then added some liquid, so this becomes a braising method. And this can actually go back on the stove for quite a while. So let's do that. Let's bring it back to the stove, put it on here, because I know that this beef is not nearly done. Is not cooked nearly as much as I would like. And now's the time, like I said, that we might add some sour cream and it's going to be a little closer to beef stroganoff. I might add some whole grain mustard or something. Sometimes pickled relish would taste very good in here. But the basic idea is coating the fat with flour, having it combined with the olive oil to make yourself a nice pan sauce. This, I will lower this heat very low and very possibly cover the pan so that I don't lose any more moisture and it just kind of steams in here. So this really covers 2 or 3 different topics, and that's why I was so excited to show you it today, because it's the type of thing that you can do tonight. Get yourself a protein product, any protein product you like, beef or chicken or pork or shrimp or lobster or scallops or anything that you want, coat it in flour, saute method by getting the pan hot first, add some kind of liquid that then will create that sauce. You've got a roux in the pan at that point, and the rest is up to you. Serve it on rice, serve it on noodles, serve it any way that you want. It's a great cooking method, a basic cooking method, and we call it braising, but we're going to touch on this again another time. Thank you again for watching. Remember, here at Cooking Coarse, it's not about fine cooking, it's about overcoming these recipes, empowering yourself to use your creativity and get back into the kitchen, make things that you're proud of for your family. Join me again tomorrow on Cooking Coarse.